3, 2, 1. We have ignition, and we have liftoff. We have liftoff of the Titan Centaur, carrying the first of 2 Voyager spacecraft to extend man's senses farther into the solar system than ever before. Reports coming back indicate those twin large solid motors are functioning perfectly, producing 1.2 million pounds of thrust each.
Good evening, I'm Larry Kane. Our big story on Eyewitness News is the live picture you see directly behind me. Suddenly, light and brightness out of a 24-hour darkness. The bright patchwork of the second night of the great New York energy crisis of 1977.
Columbia Pictures, in association with EMI, presents Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Star Wars, 1 billion years in the making, and it's coming to your galaxy this summer.
On January 20th, 1977, Jimmy Carter took the oath of office as the 39th President of the United States. He promised a new era of honesty in government and a break from the politics of the decades before. That summer, NASA engineers launched the twin spacecraft, Voyager 1 and Voyager 2, designed to leave Earth behind entirely. Each carried a golden record, a message in a bottle meant for whatever intelligence might find it someday, somewhere in the vastness of space. On May 25th, Star Wars was released to theaters, igniting the public imagination with visions of alien worlds, galactic empires, and the hero's journey retold for a new age. Meanwhile, an occult revival that had been building since the 1960s came to a head. Astrology, tarot, and mystical teachings were quietly returning to the mainstream. It was said that humanity was moving deeper into the Aeon of Horus, an age of awakening to greater truths. Then, on August 15th, the Big Ear radio telescope at Ohio State University detected a signal from the direction of the constellation Sagittarius that bore all the expected hallmarks of extraterrestrial origin. It lasted 72 seconds, narrow, focused, much stronger than the usual background noise, and then it was gone. Astronomer Jerry Amon, reviewing the data, circled the spike on the computer readout and scrawled a single word in the margin. Wow, the signal has never been explained and was never heard again.
Some messages come only once, and then, years later, something comes again. Objects from beyond our solar system.
The first was Oumuamua in 2017, a long, massive object from another star. It accelerated like a rocket as it left.
The second came in 2019, 2I Borisov, an interstellar object with chemical fingerprints unlike anything born in our system. And now, a third has been spotted, 3I Atlas, currently flying between the orbits of Mars and Jupiter. 3 of them in just a few short years, each stranger than the last. And the third is coming now. What will happen when it arrives? Join us as we investigate these and other questions. This is the Anunnaki Connection.
On the night of August 15th, 1977, the Big Ear radio telescope in Ohio was scanning the skies as part of a long-term SETI project. the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. At 22:16 Eastern Time, on a narrow channel centered around 1420 megahertz, the frequency of neutral hydrogen, considered by SETI researchers to be the most likely beacon for an intelligent signal. The telescope recorded a burst unlike anything it had seen before. It lasted exactly 72 seconds. The length of time Big Ear could observe any one patch of sky before Earth's rotation carried it out of range. The signal's strength rose steadily for about 36 seconds, peaked sharply, then fell away symmetrically. This was exactly what you'd expect if the source were fixed in the sky and the telescope was moving past it. When volunteer astronomer Jerry Amon reviewed the printout days later, he almost fell out of his chair. He saw the numbers and letters representing the signal's intensity, 6EQUJ5. On Big Ear's alphanumeric scale, this meant the signal had hit a peak more than 30 standard deviations above the noise floor. In other words, it was strong, very strong. Strong enough that Amon circled the sequence and scribbled a single word in red ink. Wow. That would forever become its name. The signal appeared to come from the direction of the constellation Sagittarius, near the star group Chi Sagittarii, in a region not far from the globular cluster M55. Due to Big Ear's dual-feed horn design, astronomers could narrow the location to one of two very close points in the sky, but not tell which one. From the start, one detail made the event irresistible to SETI researchers: the frequency. 1420 megahertz is the natural emission frequency of hydrogen, the most abundant element in the universe. SETI theorists had long argued that any civilization trying to make first contact would choose this channel because it's a universal marker. A beacon at this frequency would stand out as intentional. But the problem was repetition, and the WOW signal never repeated, not once. In the years that followed, Big Ear itself tried listening to the same coordinates more than 50 times. Nothing. Other observatories tried too. The Very Large Array, the Oak Ridge Meta-Array, the Green Bank Telescope, and more recently the Allen Telescope Array and the Breakthrough Listen project all aimed their ears at the same patch of Sagittarius. Still, silence. Theories poured in. One of the simplest was that it could have been terrestrial interference, a stray radar signal or military transmission bouncing off a piece of space debris. Jerry Amon himself considered this possibility, though the fact that the signal was so perfectly narrowband made it hard to explain as accidental. In 2016, a new theory suggested that two comets, 266P/Christensen and P/2008Y2, might have been passing through the area at the time, emitting radio noise from their hydrogen clouds. But the geometry didn't quite fit, and subsequent tests on similar comets found nothing at the hydrogen line. Most scientists dismissed the idea. What if the WOW signal was exactly what it looked like? A deliberate broadcast from an extraterrestrial intelligence. One possibility imagined by SETI is that such a signal might be sent once, then never again. Perhaps as a marker in time, intended for a specific listener, or as part of a sequence where the next message is not sound, but something else entirely. Nearly half a century later, the signal remains one of SETI's most tantalizing clues. A perfect example of the kind of transmission we've always hoped to find, and the kind that leaves us with more questions than answers.
Jupiter and Saturn. These giant planets and the moon surrounding them will be looked at close up by two 1,800-pound spacecraft loaded with cameras and scientific instruments. A mission that allows scientists to go back in time and sample the conditions from which the sun and the planets, including the Earth, are believed to have formed. Called Voyagers, the two 12-foot-high NASA spacecraft are being prepared for launch, one in late August, the other in early September. A dish antenna, 12 feet across, will send back scientific and engineering information and receive commands from Earth. The nuclear-powered Voyagers will carry 11 scientific experiments, including television cameras, electron telescope systems to study cosmic rays, and radio receivers to investigate radio signals coming from the huge planets.
And if Voyager should, sometime in its distant future, encounter beings from some other civilization in space, it bears a message. A phonograph record, golden, delicate, with instructions for use. And on this record are a sampling of pictures, sounds, greetings, and an hour and a half of exquisite music, the Earth's greatest hits. A gift across the cosmic ocean from one island civilization to another. The record bears, in English, an additional little handwritten greeting. It says, "To the makers of music, all worlds, all time."
Voyager 1 and 2 embarked on a rare planetary alignment that occurs only once every 176 years. A chance for gravity assists to catapult them through the solar system with efficiency. The mission began with Jupiter. Voyager 1 arrived March 5, 1979, and Voyager 2 followed in July. Then continued through Saturn, Voyager 1 on November 12, 1980, and 2 in August 1981. Voyager 1 delivered shocking revelations: erupting volcanoes on Io, active geology on Europa, intricate ring structures around Saturn, and unprecedented insight into planetary magnetospheres and atmospheres. Up till then, these worlds had been myth and mystery. Now, they were real. After completing their flybys, the Voyagers simply kept flying, past the outer solar system, past the heliosphere, and into interstellar space. On August 25, 2012, Voyager 1 became humanity's first emissary to cross the heliopause into the space between the stars. Today, decades later, both craft are still sending data, petabytes of insight into cosmic rays, solar wind, and the boundaries of our star's influence. In 2023, Voyager 1 briefly went silent due to an onboard malfunction, only to be resurrected by engineers painstakingly decoding the decades-old systems. In the late 70s, the 4 outer planets, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, were spaced just right so a single spacecraft could ricochet from one to the next, using each planet's gravity to slingshot onward. That geometry happens only about once every 175 to 176 years, and 1977 sat right in that window, exactly why NASA launched the Voyagers when it did. Despite the planetary alignment being a once-in-176-year event, there's scant evidence that anyone outside aerospace, advanced, or academic circles picked up on its symbolic weight. We found no mentions of it in contemporary New Age or occult publications of the time. In 1974, The Jupiter Effect by John Gribben and Stephen H. Plageman became an alarming bestseller. They claimed that soon-to-come planetary alignments would trigger massive earthquakes in 1982. It sparked media attention and doomsday chatter, but was mostly forgotten.
In November of 1977, astronomers spotted a small, strange object moving in an orbit between Saturn and Uranus. It was unlike anything they'd seen before. Too small to be a planet, too erratic to be a typical asteroid, and shedding traces of gas like a comet. They named it Chiron, after the wise centaur of Greek myth, healer, teacher, and mentor to heroes. Chiron is a unique celestial object, officially classified as both a minor planet and a comet. It has characteristics of both asteroids and comets, earning it the designation of a centaur. This means it has a solid nucleus, likely composed of ice and dust, and also displays a coma, a cloud of gas and dust, like a comet. Astrologers quickly saw Chiron's discovery as more than coincidence. Its orbit physically bridged Saturn, the planet of boundaries and structure, and Uranus, the planet of revolution and awakening. Symbolically, It linked the known visible planets of classical astrology to the transpersonal realms beyond. Chiron arrived at the height of the human potential movement, when self-discovery and personal growth were cultural obsessions. Retreat centers like Esalen were blending psychotherapy, Eastern philosophy, bodywork, and experimental spirituality. But this search for transformation wasn't always benevolent. The same hunger that drew some toward healing drew others into the hands of charismatic leaders. Where some found wisdom, others found control and destruction. James Warren Jones, born in 1931 in Indiana, led the People's Temple, a cult mixing Pentecostal revivalism and socialist ideals. But beneath that image was a man obsessed with control. Jones demanded absolute loyalty and used fear of outside enemies to bind the group together. In June of 1977, he fled the U.S., taking hundreds of followers with him to what he called the Jonestown Agricultural Project, a remote settlement carved out of the jungle. The following year, Jones's utopian promise collapsed into horror. More than 900 men, women, and children, all followers of Jim Jones, died after being coerced to drink a cyanide-laced drink in the remote Guyanese jungle. Armed guards stood watch as Jones delivered his final sermon, urging his congregation to commit what he called revolutionary suicide. It remains one of the largest mass murder-suicides in modern history.
By the close of 1977, the world had been through a strange convergence. A rare planetary alignment, a newly discovered celestial body, and an unexplained alien signal.
On Earth, the New Age movement was surging. Cults and spiritual experiments were multiplying, and mass psychological events were reshaping communities. Even cities weren't immune to strange disruptions. The July blackout in New York plunged millions into darkness, triggering chaos in the streets. It felt as if something was pressing on the human psyche that year.
Whether these events were coincidence or part of a deeper pattern, we simply don't know. But exactly 40 years later, something else arrived from beyond our solar system. This one wasn't a message. This time, it was a visitor.
On October 19th, 2017, the Pan-STARRS telescope in Hawaii detected something extraordinary. An object on a hyperbolic trajectory exiting the solar system, its path proving it came from interstellar space. Named Oumuamua, it was the first known object of its kind. Observers estimated its elongated shape, red hue, and tumbling motion, already strange by itself. But it was what wasn't there that really sparked alarm and fascination. No cometary coma or tail appeared even as it zipped by the sun. Harvard astrophysicist Avi Loeb, alongside Shmuel Bialy, proposed in Scientific American and scholarly papers that Oumuamua might be a light sail, an ultra-thin, reflective craft propelled by solar radiation pressure, an artificial probe sent intentionally into our system. They point to 6 key odd traits: its shape, speed, orientation, brightness, acceleration, and absence of a tail. Collectively, this breaks expectations for natural objects, presenting the possibility of alien origin. And just 2 years later, in 2019, astronomers spotted another unusual object cutting across the solar system. They named it 2I Borisov, after Gennady Borisov, the amateur astronomer in Crimea who first detected it through his homemade telescope. In June 2025, astronomers monitoring deep space picked up something extraordinary, a pulse, then another, and another. It wasn't random noise. It came in sharp bursts at 1420 megahertz, the hydrogen line, the same cosmic frequency where, nearly half a century earlier, the wow signal had first stunned the world. That number mattered. Hydrogen is the most abundant element in the universe, the foundation of stars and life itself. If any advanced civilization wanted to speak across the void, this was the one channel guaranteed to be universal. And now, just like in 1977, it was speaking again. The pulses came in groups of 3, matching Earth's rotation, as if whoever sent them was tracking us, keeping us in their sights. For hours, scientists scrambled. And then, almost on cue, the sky revealed a second act. An interstellar object, 3I Atlas, entered the solar system, the third ever discovered. Its trajectory, the same region of the sky where the signal had come from, the same direction as the original WOW signal. First, a mysterious broadcast at the universal frequency of life. Then the sudden arrival of a visitor from deep space. The story from 1977 wasn't over. It was continuing.
When 3I Atlas appeared in July 2025 on a hyperbolic path through our system, most astronomers called it a comet, albeit a rare and ancient one. But Harvard astrophysicist Avi Loeb saw something different, the possibility of a mothership. In a paper published earlier this summer, Loeb and his colleagues proposed that several of Atlas's features align far more with technology than nature. Its trajectory is nearly perfectly aligned with the planetary plane and carries less than a 5-degree tilt, a precision the odds place around 1 in 500. Further, its smoothed flybys past Venus, Mars, and Jupiter provided ideal gravitational kicks, a path more like a purpose-built survey probe than a random comet. Its unusual brightness and glow, Hubble images show a sun-facing glow at the object's front, rather than a tail behind, opposite of classic comet behavior. And finally, its size and speed. The object's brightness suggests a 20-kilometer scale, moving at over 130,000 miles per hour, both beyond what we'd predict for a lonely chunk of rock making a one-off trip across interstellar space. Because of these anomalies, Loeb argues for an intercept mission, possibly using NASA's Juno probe, currently orbiting Jupiter, to get eyes on the object firsthand. Even some policymakers, like Representative Anna Paulina Luna, have publicly urged NASA to act. The word mothership has been in UFO culture for decades, an image of a large craft seeding smaller scout vehicles. In the 1950s, contactee writers like George Adamski said he was taken aboard a vast cylindrical mothership that orbited Earth, ferried by smaller saucers. It made headlines, sold books, and set an early template, a central craft launching probes. In 1976, over Tehran, interceptor pilots described a bright primary object and a second detaching light. Official cables preserved the reports. In 2023, a draft paper by Harvard's Avi Loeb and the Pentagon's UAP Office Director Sean Kirkpatrick. They hypothesized if a large interstellar craft were in the solar system, it might release tiny probes like dandelion seeds. Still, Loeb calls this a pedagogical and speculative exercise, a way to push the envelope scientifically, not a conclusion. He notes, by far, the most likely outcome is that 3I Atlas is a natural comet.
It's tempting to say this is coincidence, that the WOW signal was radio interference, Oumuamua and Atlas just space rocks. But the pattern suggests something else. If these things might be ships or probes, then how would we ever know for sure? But more importantly, how would we know if we were being lied to? Because for decades, whispers of false flags and staged alien arrivals have haunted the edges of this story. History shows us belief can be weaponized. So what happens when that belief is engineered?
I couldn't help at one point in my discussions privately with General Secretary Gorbachev, when you stop to think that we're all God's children wherever we may live in the world, I couldn't help but say to him, just think how easy his task and mine might be in these meetings that we held if suddenly there was a threat to this world from some other species, from another planet, outside in the universe. We'd forget all the little local differences that we have between our countries, and we would find out once and for all that we really are all human beings here on this earth together. Well, I don't suppose we can wait for some alien race to come down and threaten us, but I think that between us we can bring about that realization. Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. But I've often wondered, what if all of us in the world discovered that we were threatened by a power from outer space, from another planet? Wouldn't we all of a sudden find that we didn't have any differences between us at all? We were all human beings, citizens of the world, and wouldn't we come together to fight that particular threat?
In 1962, the Cold War had America on edge. The Bay of Pigs had failed the year before. The Cuban Missile Crisis was looming just months ahead, and Washington was desperate to remove Fidel Castro from power. In that climate of fear and paranoia, America's top military leadership quietly drafted Operation Northwoods. The idea was simple: create a crisis so catastrophic, so undeniable, that the American public would demand war with Cuba. The blueprint spelled it out in detail. Stage terrorist attacks on U.S. soil, hijack civilian planes and blame them on Havana, sink refugee boats fleeing the island, even fake the deaths of American citizens, all designed to shock the nation into supporting an invasion. Operation Northwoods was formally presented and approved by the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the very highest level of the Pentagon. The men entrusted with safeguarding the United States had given their endorsement to a campaign of deception against their own people. Only one man stood in the way: the President of the United States. When John F. Kennedy was shown the proposal, he rejected it outright. Without his authorization, Northwoods was shelved, its pages locked away in secrecy. For decades, the public never knew how close the U.S. government had come to fabricating a war through false flag attacks. The next year, on November 22nd, 1963, Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas, Texas. The president who stopped the Pentagon's most audacious false flag plan was suddenly gone. Coincidence or connection? It wasn't until the 1990s, when once classified files were declassified, that Operation Northwoods finally came to light.
Operation Northwoods teaches us just one thing: the system of power is always willing to manufacture consent through fear and sacrifice lives in the process.
Born in 1945 in Montreal, Quebec, Serge Monast spent his life navigating the borders between poetry, journalism, and philosophical inquiry. Though public records don't reveal much about his family, his roots in Quebec's francophone literary scene are well established, including a body of poetic and philosophical work in the late 70s and early 80s. Through the late 80s, Monast began to turn his pen toward investigative journalism and political analysis. In 1992, he self-published Il est minuit moins 15 secondes à Ottawa, described in publisher listings as a dossier digging into Canada's impossible duality and the threat of civil unrest. He positioned himself as an independent investigator, In the early 90s, Monast became a fixture on Quebec's fringe media circuit, particularly through appearances on Esoterisme Experimental, an esoteric TV show hosted by ufologist Richard Glenn. Viewers would remember him as an intense speaker warning of looming global threats. In 1994, Serge Monast published his most controversial work yet, Project Bluebeam, a term he coined to describe what he claimed was a real plan by NASA and the United Nations to dismantle existing religions, governments, and national identities and replace them with a new world order unified under a synthetic faith. They would do this by staging a false alien invasion, by projecting images into the sky with advanced holographic technology. He claimed he obtained the concept from anonymous political insiders, Secret Service defectors, and unidentified classified documents, although he never disclosed names or provided concrete sources. He presented the theory in multiple papers and recorded lectures that circulated through his International Free Press Agency. According to Monast, Bluebeam was devised by NASA and the United Nations with the expressed purpose of dismantling religion and sovereignty and replacing them with a single New Age faith centered around a faux messiah. This would be achieved through 4 meticulously orchestrated phases. Step 1. Induce artificial earthquakes at key religious sites and falsify new archaeological finds and evidence that would undermine traditional religions. Step 2. Stage an alien invasion or simulated rapture, using advanced technology to instill mass panic and drive humanity toward a pre-designed unified authority. Step 3. Execute mass telepathic messaging via extremely low-frequency waves, making individuals believe the divine is speaking directly to them in their own language.
You are all my children.
And the final stage, launch a global holographic sky show. Images of different religious figures projected in the heavens, Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, ultimately revealing a singular Antichrist figure. Monast insisted he wasn't speculating. He said he had studied the documents. After publishing the book, he publicly warned about this alleged plan through presentations and essays. And in 1995, he published a companion volume, Les Protocoles de Toronto, outlining a Masonic connection to the conspiracy orchestrating global domination. He told of a secret consortium called 666, meeting every 18 years, plotting the New World Order via control of global elites and individual minds. He certainly didn't frame Project Bluebeam as entertainment. To him, it was an urgent reality. In 1994, Monast published Le Gouvernement Mondial de l'Antéchrist, where he suggested a hidden Illuminati cabal was coordinating world events. He pitched that the United Nations and secret societies were weaponizing mind control to dismantle national sovereignty. That same year, he released the United Nations concentration camps program in America, a theory alleging that the U.S. was setting up internment camps as part of a martial law plan orchestrated from above. Also in 1994, he tackled medical fears in vaccins, médecine militaire expérimentale, cristaux liquide. There, Monast claimed governments were using vaccines combined with liquid crystal technology to subtly manipulate human minds. By September 1996, Serge Monast's situation had taken a distressing turn. That month, his 2 children were removed from his care by Canadian authorities and declared wards of the state, a move Monast publicly attributed to repression for his investigative claims. In early December 1996, Monast was arrested, though precise details like the exact date of arrest or specific charges were never made public. All we know, based on corroborated reports, is that he spent 1 night in police custody. The arrest's purpose remains vague, possibly tied to his claims of distributing prohibited information. The next day, back at his home in Sherbrooke, Monast died of an apparent heart attack. He was 51 years old. Some of his followers insist to this day that his death was beyond suspicious, possibly connected to his exposure of deep state secrets. He warned of a time when the skies themselves would be weaponized. And in the decades since his passing, the news has been filled with developments that make his claims harder to dismiss. Governments are speaking more openly about UFOs, or in the rebranded language, UAPs. The Pentagon has released declassified footage of strange craft outmaneuvering American fighter jets. Congressional hearings now treat the subject as serious national security business. What was once dismissed as fringe conspiracy has moved into the mainstream. If Project Bluebeam was truly a plan to stage a false alien arrival through satellites, holograms, and psychological manipulation, then the groundwork may already be in place. The unexplained lights in the sky, a string of interstellar anomalies, official admissions that we don't know what these are. All of it subtly training us to accept the possibility of a cosmic encounter.
Was Serge Monast able to document the early outlines of a plan that is only now taking shape? So the question lingers: are we witnessing random events or the steps of a script written decades ago?
At the end of all this, we arrive at the one truth that cannot be denied. We do not know. We don't know what these objects in our skies really are. We don't know why interstellar visitors suddenly appear with such frequency. We don't know whether Project Bluebeam was an elaborate hoax, a paranoid fantasy, or a glimpse into an operation that's still unfolding.
What we do know is this: our history has been hidden from us. Our leaders and institutions lie, and they always have.
So when people say everything is a hoax or a misdirection, we understand, because this isn't about believing everything or rejecting everything. It's about asking the questions that cut through the noise. If we don't ask them, no one will. Thank you for joining us here on the Anunnaki Connection. Good night.